So it's been about a month, but welcome to this creative roundtable where we talk about shit and pretend like we know what we're talking about. Because that's what actors do. We lie.
Professional liars.
Really, really well. So the last time
you make it. Yeah.
So the last time when we did this, we discussed Chronexia extremely professionally. And except there's a lot of us that time, and it was like what, 6 of us? It was like
At
6 of us.
least
Yeah,
6 or
so
7.
it was a lot.
But only 3 of us were talking. So
Yeah,
I mean,
but this will be better, and plus we're recording on our own, so the quality will be proper. Lesson learned.
we pretend to know what we're talking about. There you go.
Exactly. So I'm Adam. I have Travis and Natalie.
And I'm Travis.
He's Travis, and
It's me.
It's him. It's that guy. And we have Natalie coming back. You can say things.
Hello, I'm here as well.
See, she said things, so that means she's valid. So,
I'm
all right.
a fully rounded character and also your group's diversity quota. Ha ha ha.
Hey.
So what do we got? A white guy, a half-breed, and a woman. We're good.
Yeah. Got all them Saturday
Now that's the
morning
name of the
cartoons,
podcast,
you
I
know.
think.
Oh, this is fun. So, all right, what we're going to discuss this time. Today we're going to discuss writing female characters. And it's really not that hard, guys. It's kind of easy. But for some reason, people still fuck it up. So, we are going to talk about writing female characters, the pitfalls of that, the cliches where a lot of people go wrong with it, the most common female character type that's used all the time, the negatives, the positives, some projects that just can't do it, and we will not name names.
I mean, I know you want to. But
We may
won't.
have talked about them on the podcast previously, but
I
we
mean-
won't name names.
I mean,
We always name them with names that rhyme with them.
I mean-
that doesn't count.
it'll. I don't need to break the seal yet, but
Keep all 8 of them together.
I'm
please.
gonna try. I am a horrible person.
Welcome to the Jackass podcast.
Welcome to Jackass,
I am a
Writers
horrible
Edition.
person. No, but all right. Joking aside, yes, we're gonna discuss a little bit about Chronexia and the 8 Seals. Not too much because, again, issues aside with it, because there's a lot. I do support him. I do want to see him be successful and learn and grow in episode 2, and more power to him to make his dream happen. However, I did start reading the book. I did not finish reading the book, but it's a really good example of how not to write a female character, like, at all. So, all right.
And we're not going to just talk about audio dramas and books and things like that. It affects everything from levels of TV shows, movies. Really, a lot of forms of art get it wrong.
Right. So, Natalie being our resident female quota for this. So the beauty, the whole point is so no one can bitch that we're mansplaining. So, we can.
I'm glad I can be here to do that for you.
So what
I'm
do you?
sorry. I'm gonna be a jerk about it. Sorry.
No.
Some person's going to take this like, how do you know they're not like pretending to be a girl? How do we know this Natalie's a real person?
Well,
Dude, that's
you
right.
know,
Because
I
women
just-
don't exist on the internet, apparently.
I know. I'm just a very well pitched man with a very luxurious set of testicles, and just
Luxurious,
luxurious. And I sound like
like
this.
a Hollywood carpet or something.
Yes, but I can change my voice at will.
That's horrifying. I apologize.
We're good. So, all right,
Sure.
Natalie, what's your impressions on female characters in like today's media, and like positives, the negatives, pitfalls to avoid, stuff like that?
I would say right now I feel like we're kind of at a different pendulum point. Like for a while there was that complaint that female characters were only the helpless damsel in distress that you had that were there for the men to rescue, and they couldn't really fulfill many other roles. And right now that whole pendulum is kind of swung to the other side, where there's almost a lot of too much emphasis on just how liberated and totally independent the female character is. And she can kick ass, and she don't need no man, and she doesn't need a romantic interest. She can't be helpless at any given point, and there's like a whole new checklist that you have to cross off. So on the one hand, I'm totally down with female empowerment and not needing romantic interests at the end of the movie, like
right.
movie or medium or whatever it is. And that part is great, but it's still... To me, I still see a lot of objectification in how that's portrayed, where it's still like you need to meet a specific role, and you still have to fit in this very specific, limiting sort of format where you can't have realistic characters. Like, God forbid you do write a damsel in distress character, because you'll get slaughtered 6 ways from Sunday that you're not being feminist enough. Instead of going, is your character fully well-rounded even when they are in distress or something like that. So I think we're learning that the problems are there, that female representation is problematic and has a ways to go. But we're, I think, kind of on the more extreme end of that. And finding a good in between is probably the happy medium, where the focus isn't on their role and whether or not they meet a specific set of criteria. So I'm good to a certain extent. Like, to me, the biggest example that drives me crazy and had me so angry, my boyfriend at the time literally was like, you have to stop watching this because it scares me. You go to this place where I can't follow. Is the show.
All right, Natalie Portman.
No, seriously, I it's a very dark place you don't want to see. Is the show Once Upon a Time on ABC, and I mean, the obvious fan service aside, that it definitely is providing for women to like relive their Disney fantasies and hopes and dreams and whatever, you know, I'm down with some good, you know, fulfillment and different stuff like that. But for me, that's the epitome of just terrible, not comprehending what it actually means to write complex female characters. They have female characters in often way too complex situations and are still as dull as a sack of potatoes. So, or no, what was it Amber said? That the charisma of an eggplant is really the way. That's gonna be a phrase I need in my normal life. So anyways, that's kind of my particular thing, as I see Once Upon a Time being the big picture that is of the endemic state of women in media right now, where
and that's a good thing. Like, one of the things that I remember, and I'm gonna go to Age of Ultron for this one. Remember when like Black Widow had like the one moment she's like, I can't have kids, I'm a monster, and like Tumblr lost their shit, and it was
I didn't have a problem with
that. And that's the point. It's like it's like they shamed the fact that she felt like a monster because she couldn't have babies, and was like, how dare she? She's not feminist enough, or that's you're writing her poor. It's like, dude, it's getting to the point where it feels like female characters, they can't have flaws. If they have flaws, people
or not
bitch.
That they can't have. And I think this one was specifically, they felt that it was a very specifically feminine and traditionally feminine problem, where she is a woman who her ultimate goal is to get pregnant and have babies and do nothing but reproduce.
And like, I don't think that was like her. I don't even think that was like her ultimate goal. And it's like, it feels like it was a black and white thing. It was like, you have the ability to choose. Right. It's like, it's the lack of choice.
And that the fact that but you know, empowered female women sometimes want to have kids, and
go figure.
Like, that doesn't affect her ability. I mean, she shot the biggest hypocrite hypocrisy is that she shot that entire movie pregnant.
Right.
Like, I mean, if that's not an example of empowered feminism, I don't know what is. And, you know, just especially when, and I mean, even Joss Whedon, unfortunately, has the history of Charisma Carpenter was, like, kind of written out of Angel for getting pregnant. And I feel like in some ways this was all him being like, I fucked up. I'm totally going to do this the right way, and of course you can be in the movie. I mean, it's also Scarlett Johansson and not Charisma Carpenter, which is unfortunate, but I love Charisma Carpenter. Sorry. Sorry, that's just kind of a
I think the thing we're all kind of trying to get on and layer on that is that you mentioned that a lot of people are looking for these strongly written female characters, and they stop thinking of just writing a well-written character. They're so associated with the fetishization of the gender.
Yes.
So in the past, and you'll see it happen a lot, it was a lot specified on the fetishization of romance, of sex, and things like that. And now it's become almost a fetishization of things like empowerment and things like that. So you're seeing a lot more of this ad press and release of going, this woman's real strong and will kick ass just like the dudes do, as a way of selling it in a marketing way and not really thinking of the character of, hey, you know, there's nothing wrong with these feminine features of these women, but it shouldn't necessarily be the aspect of what designs their personality as a character.
And Disney is so guilty of that right now. It's driving me nuts.
I remember that they let an ad for a Marvel TV show where they were talking about the big deal was it was the first lead female character in a Marvel TV show. I saw commercials for this plastered everywhere, and she was like some sort of like 1930s secret agent kind of thing, and they wouldn't stop talking about how she was a strong, badass female that doesn't take shit off of anyone. And it was such a lack of focus on making the character feel alive and more of like saying, hey there, kids who hate the fact that we have women that are in subtext romances. Here's someone who doesn't deal with that. She fights crime. And it's the opposite side of the spectrum, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's when you want to like... I'm sorry, go.
I'm sorry. Well, and when you bring up Agent Carter too, like I thought that series was really well done overall, but I actually had someone point out that, and I didn't notice it as much until they said something, but I thought it was really interesting how they really go out of their way to paint the whole misogynistic women's rights era men, you know, and the fact that she has to kind of live this double life as a secret agent while also fighting the man who's out to get her. And they really do it in a very merciless way where it's not, we genuinely think that you might not be able to do this and we're scared for your well-being, into just, you're a woman and you can't do anything. And it's very black. They do try to go black and white with that aspect of it as well.
Yeah,
and it lacks the layers of actually having interesting and realistic.
There's no in between. It's like you're either this or you're that, and it's like no one can comprehend the fact. Well, maybe they're a mix of both.
And I think it's the focus and motivation of the series they create, because as you said, when you watch a series, it was a little bit better in that regard. But the ad we're showing, hey,
how they're marketing.
Watching this is because this woman's empowered.
You know what else suffered from that? Ghostbusters, and I'm gonna shit on that movie because it was bad.
Oh.
It was like it was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It was just that was a movie that happened. But the problem was people criticized that movie, and they're like, yeah, it doesn't look funny. And then the way that they market it was like, oh, it's because you don't like women. And then you try and make it about this women thing instead of like, what, they can't suck. The movie can't be bad. You have to say it's because people don't like women. It's black and white crap, and it's like. The reason that movie bombed, and it bombed bad, was simply because Paul Feig is a jackass and hates men. He literally hates men. I showed you that article that he wrote about how women are just by default funnier than men. I'm like, you're a dude. Do you have like man guilt? Like, what is this? It's like, why are you going out of your way to like shit on your audience and then making little jokes about how men are bad people and
that's another thing.
It's just
too,
like it's not gonna work.
Yeah, the female empowerment is coming at the expense of men. It's not making it's very anti-feminine.
It's not equality.
Feminist in that sense, because the whole point of feminism is to make women, or to put women in an equal position or place alongside men.
But that's not the point anymore. And it's like people this is how it is, and this goes for anything right now. People do not want equality. They say they do. They don't want that. They want like payback. They want, well, for X years you guys did this, so now it's going to be our time to get that, and then it's going to be balanced. It's like, no.
Well, and I think we were having this conversation a little bit too, where you were talking. It came up, I think, last week, where you said something about like fetishization of minorities.
Yeah, it's like kind of like it's like, I feel like, first of all, I'm going to say this straight up because I have to, because if I'm going to talk about minorities or any POC stuff, I have to preface it with this so I don't get attacked. I am biracial. I can say what I want. Deal with it, people. It's like, for instance, I said something about like, after, again, we're not going to discuss this in full because it's not the point of this podcast, but just to touch on it,
right.
Like after some person was elected into office and people were losing their shit and we're like, we're going to move to Canada, I made a simple comment: don't run away, stay and fight, that's how you make change. And someone's like, oh, I don't need to hear another white person expressing this. They fought all their life. I was like, wow, thanks for assuming you knew what I was and jumping down. And it's like, and it's getting to a point where people are saying this should happen solely because these people are minorities. And it's like, yeah, that's not equality. Equality means, yeah, you got this job because you're more qualified and you're whatever color. It's like, that's equality. Equality is getting fired because you suck at the job, and you're not fired because you're black or Hispanic or Asian or white or whatever. You're fired because you're an idiot. That's equality. You're hired because you're smart. That's equality. But the problem is, that's not what people want. And this goes with this stuff with feminism writing female characters too. It's like, they don't want equality. They want like payback. They want like time served, basically. And that's how it's coming.
Before we really get heavily into that, I really think that a big part of it is that we've kind of started to move into a market that ignores stories of characters that have already established themselves as good female lead characters,
right?
Because they don't advertise them.
No, you're completely right.
For years.
Oh, 100%.
Well, there are, of course, let me say, there are movies and TV shows and books and things like that do exploit women in very negative ways or very stereotypical ways. But there have been movies going on for decades that have shown how strong women are without having to talk about
like DC
They just have characters that are good and well written, and if you watch the films or watch the shows, you would recognize that. But the problem is,
it's not mainstream.
We've turned into this kind of society that has used it as an advertising or a platform that says, this is how good my TV show is.
Pay attention.
I show empowering women that don't take shit. As opposed to just focusing on the story and making it work, or pointing out, hey, this movie came out and had great female characters. Why aren't we talking about how great that was?
Right.
And again, it's not even because she's a female, she's a good character. Exactly. That's the point.
And DC actually has like 50-something plus gay characters. They've had them forever. And because they're not mainstream, and this is like jumping off of that, it's like they want to change mainstream characters into different ethnic groups and like whatever, or change genders, and that's them being progressive. It's like, no, that's you forcing stuff to market and make money. Like,
we also live in a social media outlet where the problem is that if you have 3 jackasses get on Twitter and say, I don't know why they're making that character a girl, they're going to immediately turn that and go, how can we make money off of this? Oh yeah, we'll put it on every BuzzFeed account we can find how this is happening, and the world thinks it, so it causes this clash and then viewership.
It's so accurate, though, that It's something that starts off as well-intentioned, but it really has boiled down to being a marketing tool. And people aren't seeing that they are getting manipulated a lot of times into frenzies over stuff, rather than picking their battles and really saying the whole point is we expect this in the first place, and you don't get a participation trophy, the whole thing they complain about millennials for. You don't get a participation trophy just because your female did something that was mildly empowered and they didn't get kidnapped or something like that. Like, yeah, that's just basic expectation of what you should be doing to be competitive.
Right.
And,
That shouldn't be
another question is that even in that regard, how many of those shows or movies or anything that do that advertising technique succeed in what they're trying to do?
They really
You see
don't.
a lot of these
They
movies
don't.
like like Ghostbusters, that the reason they push people away wasn't because they're female characters. It was because the approach of both the filmmaking, the news they told about
Yep.
it, and the film itself was confrontational.
Yep.
It
And
picked
they turn
fights with certain
around, though,
people.
and they say, "Oh, the reason we failed was
Yep.
because the men were trying to
They
boycott
deleted
us."
they deleted YouTube comments that were not about misogyny or anything like that. They deleted them because they wanted to make it's like I give their marketing team credit to an extent. I mean, it failed, but it's like they chose to make a narrative and they deleted any comments that said otherwise.
Yeah, it's a hard call because
It
like
is.
on a certain level, I don't think I part of me does want that to be better controlled, and part of me is like, yeah, they shouldn't be allowed to just post those comments and have them out there. You know, the legitimate
Well, no, what I
bad
mean,
ones.
what I meant was they deleted the comments that weren't bad. Like there was comments,
anything.
right? There were comments that were like, "This movie doesn't." It's like you have all these talented, funny women, and these jokes are stale. It doesn't look appealing. They deleted those comments and
Yeah,
kept the
that's-
really messed up ones because they wanted people to look at this video and see the main messed up ones about, oh, this movie's gonna suck because they're women. So it
Okay, I
made
don't know
that
about
narrative.
That one, so I can't,
Yeah,
I can't
that was a
comment on
thing.
that as much, but
People were saying
that's-
like
I think
their comments are like not there anymore. It was deleted. It was insane. It was like it just backfired.
I think the long point we're trying to make is that even though we feel like at progression we've kind of moved in a different direction,
Yeah.
we're suffering from a lot of the same issues that we suffered from 50 years ago.
they just
and
look
just
very
continuously.
differently. Yeah.
It's a different mask this time, but it's the
a
same
different
thing.
type of exploitation, still at women's expense.
So to move this along, then it's like so. Then how do you tell if you're writing, good enough female characters? And I want to bring this one point up because this is something where a lot of people like to fall back on. It's like, oh, we'll take the Bechtel test, and if it fails that, you're fucked. If it passes that, you're golden. And I hate that. I'm like, the Bechtel test is flawed as shit. It's like, okay, what was it? It was like have two women. It's like have two or more women talk about something that has nothing to do with men and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, the two women can have the most superficial discussion, and it passes the test. It could have like, hey, did you see those shoes? Those shoes looked great. Oh my gosh, this dinner is amazing. How's yours? It's hot. Pass.
Well, it has to be for more than a minute, too.
Right. Well, you can admit that's a conversation that can go for more than a minute. But even in like what I gotta look this up
But
now
I
because
think
I remember what else is there.
there's
It's like
two different. There's a couple different ones that have been added, or at least that
Is it-
people
no.
have proposed anyway, like the Mako Mori and the Furiosa test, which are more about.
oh, those are new.
does-
Yeah.
Yeah, those are more about does a female character, see completion to her narrative arc, sort of a deal, where she has a very specific goal in mind and get to.
Okay.
that
See,
realized.
those are better. I didn't know those were a thing. Like the Bechtel. I found.
I think they're more just casually proposed and not anything specific. But
Right.
I like those better because they
Oh
do,
yeah. Because this one's like
that's
the movie.
more important.
The movie has at least two women in it who talk to each other about something besides a man. It has nothing to do with it being about a minute. That's the Bechtel test. Has at least two women in it.
To be honest, it's not a bad thing to keep in mind.
It's a
to be
starting
completely
point, but
honest.
again, like going back to
It
before,
shouldn't
it could
be
be
the end all be all, but it's
could
a good
be-
thing to keep in mind.
it's like it could be the most superficial crap that has nothing to do with anything. And it passes the test. It's like, well, it's a good starting point. I think it's a good starting point like in the outline, but then you have to flesh it out.
I guess a good way to approach this to kind of get an understanding of where a good direction with writing female characters come is from our own personal interpretations, because we've all written stuff that's contained female characters. So what I would say, going to Natalie here, what would be your approach of structurally making a character who just happens to be female?
I mean, honestly, a lot of the times I don't think about it that.
Well, because you're a woman.
I mean, it's more of. Usually, when I'm trying to figure out what gender a character is going to be, is my cast or and I say cast even when it's like a book or something like that. Is it balanced out? Do I have a good ratio of men versus women, or is there a specific reason it's more men or more women? And narratively, how do I use that? But when I'm creating female characters, it's still, I very much, I mean, my female characters go through as much shit as my male characters do. You're not exempt just because of your gender. And so, I mean, I guess I don't pull my punches anymore than I would for the men. It's
a really hard it's a hard question to answer. Admittedly.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to think of how to articulate.
Because I think you have the kind of same thought process I do in it, is that when it comes down to writing the characters, I don't take the gender as a specific motivation factor of the character.
Yes.
Like there might be guys, there might be girls, there might be some that are gay, straight, whatever, and it's really not related to who they are as people. Like there are characters that will utilize feminine wiles and things like that, or be very macho men, but there could also be the reverse. There could be very feminine men and macho girls. Like it really doesn't make a difference on their gender, that, at least in my opinion on my characters, that affects personally of who they are. They just happen to be guys and girls.
That's how it
should
should be.
And I think like some people have suggested, like, would it change your narrative so dramatically if you switched out the gender of all your characters? And can your narrative still stand up? You know, not saying that you have to change every single, that if for some reason they do something that's slightly more girly or slightly more masculine, that it doesn't work. But like, can your plot as a whole function if this character was a dude and not a girl, or the other way around?
Right. And like, I think the issue too is when you're having, especially from male writers, and let's just call it for what it is, male writers are by default not going to have the same experiences as female writers. So a lot of writers, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, like, but I'm pretty sure it's the same thing with you guys. We write from what we know. And, you know, what we don't know, we usually ask other people that do know, or we research it. So, like, I see, like, a lot of the fault with male writers, it's like they insert their wish fulfillment or their fantasy stuff because they don't know how to write female characters. They overthink it. They don't think, oh, well, it's just a person, so I write this character as a person and that's it. They don't think like that. They like, go over the top. And and then, like, when the objectification happens, that's just straight up wish fulfillment at that point. Where it's like,
the biggest area where this happens though is film, and that's usually based on limited time constraints, where you're trying to portray a character or personality within 15 minutes.
Well, not necessarily. It happens in books. It happens in books a lot, and it's like
I'm just saying it's more of a crux of limited time frames. They exemplify specifically in film. That's why it's still such a bad problem.
It's kind of.
I don't think it's limited time.
No,
frames
it's
so much
not.
as
It's just how they write it.
laziness.
If they don't know women, exactly. It's like, all right, example time. So you write a female character, and when you have things like, oh, they fell down and now they're getting up. If you write, okay, the character fell down and now she stands back up. Totally fine. But if she fell down and you're spending like a paragraph describing the mud on her shorts that are now sticking to her bubble butt, and how it's like the color of the shorts are now kind of opaque and showing her skin, and they're tight to the crevices around her ass, and it's like, okay, dude, really? Do you really need like a paragraph to when you can just be like, she stood back up? It's like, you don't need it. It's like, listen, if you want to write certain details, okay, fine. But when you go over the top,
I'm against being the really aggressively prescriptive in that you cannot write this or it's automatically that. I used to be a member of a lot of writing forums back in the day. I was really into the fan fiction scene for a while, and especially in the era where Mary Sues were a prescriptive thing you did not do. And I've backpedaled on that, at least to a point where I think that Mary Sues can actually be somewhat healthy writing tools, because a lot of times they're female characters who are doing what female characters never get to do, and that's basically have control of their own narrative and just do whatever they want. If it's a guy doing that, it's a male wish fulfillment fantasy that a lot of times guys are totally allowed to play with and have fun with, but if a girl does it, it's a Mary Sue and has to be banned. So and I'm not saying all Mary Sues are necessarily well-written characters that are totally perfect in their own right, so much as just I've stopped feeling like it's important to have a clear definition that you can and can't do specific things with your characters.
I think that can be also genre specific as well, because
too.
I think sometimes the emphasis on whether this character is vulnerable or faultless really doesn't make a huge difference when something is a visual or action spectacular that is by definition not going to have the layers to it as much as you expect, and that's fine. Those exist. But a lot of times, if you do see where it hurts a lot when you read a book or things like that, is when the intention of the book or intention of the film or video or things like that is to be this big dramatic piece, and they get that part wrong. That's when it hurts.
Well, that's from like character, like personality traits, and that's different than what I'm like talking about, where it's like.
Well, and the thing is that, and I've taught, and when I was going to film school, a big part of it was descriptive of heavy detail. So I'm not honestly surprised there's a lot of scripts that mention,
this is
it's sticking to the butt, things like that, because they're trying to get studios to be like,
No, this is books, this isn't scripts. It's the difference is when you do that. And like a paragraph before, the dude just stood back up, and then you're doing all the heavy emphasis on the female character.
Well, in that particular scene, if it's the one
it is
you're talking about,
yeah.
In the problem with that one is that the scene is basically about. Is that the scene where he's like legitimately worried about the character like dying or something?
No, this
like
is
that?
Before that. This was like
Okay.
there was like it was like the initial antagonist fight and.
Okay, well then in the initial antagonist fight, then I mean you can't. It's not that you can't necessarily say these things like that.
But don't go on
example,
for like 2 paragraphs of it.
Yeah, like that particular example. The reason it doesn't work is because it doesn't fit the scene it's in, but also the book does not acknowledge that it's engaging in wish fulfillment, and like
right.
You can use wish fulfillment
course.
characters and scenarios. But when you're trying to pretend you're totally above that and then inserting it anyway, that's where it comes off.
Well, when it's like when the character is only wish fulfillment. And
right. And
there's
it's not like a
else.
Stylized intentional choice. Like I'm thinking maybe like a Tarantino style thing where it's intentionally over the top. It's intentionally meant to be a stylized, artistic decision and not just a, no one else is like that except this character. When it's out of place, that's when it's not okay.
And like reading when, like same book example, and this is the other thing. It's.
And what book is this?
You know what book it is. It is. Okay.
Maracas and the 17th.
Okay, so when I hate you so much when preparing to do the proper analysis on Chronexia and the 8 Seals, I bought the book because I want to support them and I want to read the book out of curiosity and see the difference. And it's like I'm trying to be professional here, and because I do support them, but at the same time, it's just like, oh, I'm gonna have to edit my laughing. Natalie knows. So the point is, I read the book and I started reading it, and like the main character, Misty, is just an object plot device, and like pretty much every scene that she was in initially, a lot of descriptions on her body and ways, and like she had to get surgery or something. She had to get like a shot stabbed in her heart or something, and clearly he doesn't know where the heart is located. Because it's like it started talking about holes in her in her bra,
married, right?
And yeah, he's married, and I think he just had a kid. Which congratulations, like real talk. It's like good on you.
Legit.
That's awesome. But it's like you could tell the problems in it, and when you have the main character, going through your female protagonist's clothes to sniff them and be like, oh, there's 3 holes in her bra. It's like, that's not where the heart is, bro. It's kind of like, all right, how are you writing this? Is this like a fully developed character? What's her motivations? What does she stand for? So I get to condense this. And going back on what everyone said is like, is this person a character? Does the gender matter? Does the gender define the character? And
I'll make a specific cliff note to that, actually, because let's say, for example, and I'm not talking about your book, there is a descriptive of a character described in a very sexualized manner as they get up. Would you say it's potentially acceptable if the character is naturally flirtatious, or the concept they're trying to get to the reader or the viewer is this person's going to be a very flirtatious in character, not in perspective, but in character?
Right. Yeah.
So it's, and I think the whole roundabout of it.
Choice. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole roundabout of that is that it should provide a point of describing who the character is versus, as you mentioned, wish fulfillment, fan service. It's that pulls yourself away from the actual story and concern for this character.
That nails it.
Yep.
Does it contribute to the story, or does it pull you out of it?
And I think that's the major difference. And I think that's why a lot of times, like in stories like that, where it seems like there's these unnecessary sexual advances or these unnecessary viewpoints of their perspective of being entitled or whatever.
It's like in an anime when there's a fight scene and there's just like random, do we really need to switch to a camera shot of panties at this point? Was this really...
Did the bullet have to travel between her boobs?
Yes. I love
in
how
slow
we
motion
immediately
Matrix
think
time.
of like the exact same. I was thinking of that too.
That's the dumbest scene of recent memory I can remember in that regard.
Right, and it's
I love though someone broke that scene down, totally off topic, where they calculated how fast her boobs would have to be moving for a bullet to
like
move
helicopter
between
blades.
them. Yeah, they're literally like, okay, this would have to be long at like 40. They'd have to be flapping back and forth like 40,000
breaking the
times
sound barrier.
Yeah, basically. And then they like someone drew a gif of like this like chick being like basically pommeled in the head by her own boobs because they're flapping back and forth so fast.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, I love anime. Like, so
Anime was a mistake.
Thank you, Hayao Miyazaki.
Yeah, so what we're getting to, it's like they can have these traits, but as long as it doesn't take you out of the story, it doesn't like hurt, like make the reader pause or like whoever's viewing things. It's like if I'm watching something,
that's ultimately the reason why wish fulfillment stuff is not great in your narrative, is because it's your wish fulfillment that is literally, it's something that exists outside the world of the story, and basically the world of the story is something that you could think of as existing in its own kind of universe, and you're the one with the camera. So basically, and so what you choose to focus on says a lot about who you are as a storyteller, because the story could exist without you, but you're the creep who's going up and saying, nope, this shot needs to be on her boobs for, another 5-10 seconds. Just get a really nice lingering
it's also
pan and going up and down that.
It's an intention of the author too, or even just the writer of a character, because when you make characters, the big part of it is to try to understand their personal motivation, what their goal is. And that goes to acting, it goes to writing, whatever it might be. Why this person would do something can dictate how you write the story, how they perceive. If a character is sexual, they might be motivated to do so. But if the point of their actions is to provide no substantial meat to the story or meat to the character, then it doesn't do anything for them. It doesn't give them any kind of weight. It doesn't give them any kind of humanity at all. Because we're all motivated. It's not like most people walk around going, I'm not motivated by anything. I just want to look sexy all the time. Like, that doesn't happen.
Right. And like going back, it's like I'm going back to personal, writing, and like original characters. I'll go with Shadowhaven for a moment. Like for me anyway, when I realize certain stuff, it's like when looking at like in the book originally, Amy died within like a chapter of her introduction in the original version. It was like, hi, I'm Amy. All right, I'm dead. So it like she had like literally she was literally just a plot device. It was like, all right, here she is. And when I adapted it, I was like, that doesn't work. It's like, I want her to be a character and have reasons. Like, yeah, she's going to die pretty fast, but to at least flesh her out and have her be a thing and have her own motivations. So it's like, it's a lesson that I learned. It was like, all right, let me try and like redevelop certain characters and give them their own motivation in the story and their own personality and their own like strength. And a lot of the newer female like adaptations are some of my favorite characters in the book right now, and like in this series. Like fucking Karen is like one of my favorite characters at the moment. I am so happy I just made her up out of nowhere. I was like, I'm gonna make you because this is awesome. I actually did like Amy a lot because of when she was a bitch, but I liked her because she was conflicted. And I like Sharon's updated like goals and personality and motivation and shit like that. But it takes a while. It's like whenever listen, it's you don't know if you don't know certain things and you don't know where to go, you're gonna write and you're gonna make guesses and assumptions, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as you reread it later and you're like, oh wow, that doesn't work. This person didn't fit as a character. And
well, there's no issue with starting by making a character as some kind of stimulus or lead up to for the protagonist to go to whatever event.
Yeah.
Like that's the point of having characters outside the protagonist, is that you initially think of them of how am I going to get the character from point A to point B involving interactions, and then you can layer it on top of them like that. That's not an issue.
No, but it's like it's a good starting point. And but I specifically mentioned how Amy was a plot device because I want to transition to another show that is run by a person who clearly doesn't know women and likes to make them as plot devices. So let's talk about post David Tennant Doctor Who for a bit.
I'll quietly listen because I've never seen Doctor Who.
Stephen Moffat.
You gonna be okay, Natalie?
No.
Nothing will ever be okay.
No, it was such a good show and you ruined it.
Stephen Moffat doesn't know how to write women. It's like, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's the most delicate way you could put that.
It is. They're all plot devices. Every single one of his female characters are a plot device. Every single one.
Yeah, if you want to know how not to write female characters, just go watch. Like, season 5, you can almost ignore it, but after that, it's pretty...
Yeah, like his first season's like, oh, okay, this is...
Claire freaking Oswald is...
And I am pissed because I liked Clara originally. I was like, you could...
I know! I know!
Then he turned her into, like, a plot device.
Also, my entire relationship with, like, River Song has been, like, a nonstop roller coaster of, okay, I can actually see you being a functional character when Moffat doesn't work with you. And there it goes again. Yep. There it goes. It's terrible again. And, oh, no, she actually has some human moments and could be a really well-developed, interesting character. And there it goes again. There it goes again. Because Moffat's like, nope, I do it better. See, watch me do it. And no, sorry. I have a lot of feelings about this topic.
Yeah, the point is, he does not write... I think what we're trying to get down to is making a human character. That's kind of the thing. It's like, make your character that's a female, or make your human character have emotions and motivation that just happens to be a female. Like, yes. That should be the basic. Obviously, yes, have their gender have some defining traits to their personality, because that's going to happen. Like, guys, by default, it's like, it's not all of their personality, but they will have male traits that kind of influence some of their what they do and how they act. And the same thing with women. But you take that away, you should still have a human character where you're like, oh, they function, they have flaws, they have goals, they have this. Their goal is not related solely to the main character, or they are not there just because of the main character, that they actually add to something.
Exactly. Ding, 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 ding.
And it's like, it's not one extreme or the other. It's not like female characters that just kick ass and hate men or whatnot, or that's not independent. That's not a good character. It's not well written. It's just a cliche, and it's hollow. Make them human.
And they're, and it's just, and the problem I have with Moffat too is that he really does. it comes across as, because I write women this way, y'all can't get on my case for this. And
Right.
you're just hating on young haters. What up? Sorry. Our mutual friends
Continue.
just embedded us with K-pop, and I just that's my response is just the young
Yo,
haters.
I'm not gonna front.
What
Anytime
up?
I'm planning on it. Like any future hate comments I get, that's my response.
Yes.
Like it's just
I love
that's my response to it. Like, to be honest, this is like completely off the topic, but I need to watch the video, because if there's a dance in that, I will make an animated GIF, and that will be my response.
Okay, you're gonna watch the video, and what you need to do is you need to make like a version of maybe like Adam, or no, Karen would be great. There's this guy dancing around with a paper bag with eyes drawn all over it, just kind of like, what up, hey, yo, kind of a thing. That's what you should do.
Okay. Oh my God. Yes, I will do that. That will be my response to every hate comment. Is just that.
It's like the most off-topic thing.
It is. I'm sorry. Back on topic.
You have to link me to this song too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's called #LoveYaHaters by.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
That sounds great.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so great. It's so great. Korea should be proud.
K-pop is my lifeblood right now. It just is. I'm still dying over the Conan O'Brien one. I'm like, that is amazing. It's so good. Conan
At least when when there's bad things in the world, at least there's K-pop.
K-pop. Because you know what it is? It's like K-pop is like reminding. This is completely off topic. K-pop is reminding me of like earlier hip hop, and like the beats when it was good, and it's also reminding me of reggaeton and stuff like that with the beats and shit. And I'm like, okay, this is why I love this. This is great. Anyway, back on topic. Moffat sucks at writing women.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like it feels like a problem where people like, if you think, oh well, I have X amount of female characters, by default love me. It's like I hate that. It's like go on Tumblr and emphasize, look at all the females that I do. I'm amazing. And you're
Does
using
your plot work?
Yeah.
Do you write an interesting story? Do I care? You can have 50 female characters. Do I give a shit about any of them?
Yeah, that's what it boils down to, really. I mean, do you care about them? Are they cardboard?
And that's not to say there is not a very legitimate problem of women being represented in media in much smaller amounts and in limited degrees compared to men. That is a huge problem. And this is not to say that you're screwed if you do or you don't, so much as just, if you're doing it for the right reasons, then we're all the way behind you. Not even the right reasons. If you're just doing it because it's not wish fulfillment fantasy and you're not expecting your stuff to be loved automatically and solely because you have women characters, then awesome. Totally there 100%.
Mm-hmm. I completely forgot that I wrote a blog on this.
You did. I remember reading it.
I did write this. I did mention that. I don't know. Travis, you used to write stuff.
Every now and then.
Ouch. By the way, Travis, I'm still waiting for that. What was it? You were going to do an audio drama, and all the villains were based on card suits and stuff like that.
My big problem was scheduling at the time did kind of fall apart, but
I'm totally just getting on your case. I'm just
it was the rock star. I still have.
Yes.
You cast me. I'm waiting. Where's my part?
Yeah.
Where's my
I know,
part?
Travis.
To be fair,
Travis,
I still have all the scripts.
Travis,
I still have all the art I commissioned.
I need to ask you,
So-
Travis. So what's going on is you made a story that you got some people hyped for, and you haven't followed through on it. So I need to ask this: are you black now?
Do you leave that poor man alone?
do you live in the middle of nowhere?
Am I the only black man in Rusk, Texas?
Are you allowed in houses after certain periods of time?
God.
What?
Oh, poor Oh God, poor man. What a poor man.
Our
It's a long buddy of ours who's
okay.
who wrote a radio play
Oh, so
that
good.
died 10 years ago. But also there's a point where I was hanging out with him, and I won't get into that. It's pretty bad.
Oh, I will.
All I can say is that, asking on the writing perspective at least, is that I've found myself looking back at some of the stories I've written for, because I wrote one about a girl that was haunted by 5 spirits. I wrote kind of a Western one that didn't really go much of anywhere. It was my first story. And I wrote this one about this female superhero. It was never my intention when I wrote those stories that it would particularly be female mains all across. I think it just kind of worked out that way based on their character complex. Mm-hmm. Like, it was, especially the one I wrote the most for was the girl who's haunted by a bunch of spirits. It was just this kind of average girl living in the city that basically used a Ouija board but accidentally got possessed by 5 different personalities who lived in the house.
Wait, was that single female and haunted?
Yep,
Yes.
single female and
I
haunted.
remember that! Oh my gosh! I
had that
was
jingle
you.
at the very beginning of
Single
my thing.
female and haunted. I forgot that was you.
Yeah, that was mine.
It was really good.
It was super campy, and I wanted to make it like an 80s TV show on purpose.
It was really good, though.
It was.
Yeah, I would love to start that one again, because that one was a blast.
You should.
And it always ended with the beginning of going, oh yeah. It
Yes,
was really
yes.
over the top.
Yes.
That was me.
Own that shit. It was really
but-
good.
And I still have good concepts on that. But anyway,
You should do it. Do it.
I wrote a character that had a number of specifically fixable faults in her life. She was someone that was not happy with her job, wasn't happy with the position in life. She didn't use that as a direct weight to hold her down, because she was actually rather energetic, kind of a goofball, things like that. And it, through the story, was going to be the solving the problems of these spirits, finding their unfinished business, but in the process of bettering her as a person. Now, did it really have anything to do with the fact that she was female? I mean, despite the title being super camp and everything? No, it had nothing to do with the fact that she was a woman. It just, at the time when I wrote the character, it made the most sense at the time that she was a girl. But it never weighed the fact of how her story was written. I remember one of the comments I got, because I wrote this back in like 2009 or something like that.
Yeah, it was
2008,
out when
so-
I started mine show, which has been running for, oh gosh, it's been
For a while.
8 years. 8 years.
But I where was I going with that? I was thinking 8 years for a moment. I laced a lot of the part of writing stories. I remember getting comments specifically about some of the friends of the character, and some people were complaining of, oh, her best friend sounds just like her. Oh, you have a stereotypical gay character there. But then when they actually watched it, I played the characters off as normal people. And one of the comments I got later was like, I'm glad that like when you portrayed a homosexual character, that it really wasn't a big deal. Like, it wasn't anything going, hey, I got gay characters in my show, waka waka. It was more of this just happened to be who the character was. And I didn't play it up that way. I didn't write it up that way. It was just kind of how it worked out. I still need to get back to the story. I really like that story. But my point is that when I'm writing a lot of characters like that, whatever their gender, sexuality, perspectives, things like that, is that it doesn't necessarily come down to those elements being the defining factor. Mm-hmm. To me, it really came down to who Zoe, the main character's motivations were as a person, as someone who she felt like a bit of an unfinished product in her own regard, and she needed motivations. She was kind of someone who really didn't try to push things too hard and was kind of stuck in a rut in what she was. But the stimulus of having all these other characters, that some of them were sort of stereotypical, but they were going to evolve. Like, there was a sultry, like, lounge singer. There was kind of the snobby pop artist. There was a mobster who just sounded like a Brooklyn stereotype. But it was all going to lead to characters evolving and bettering each other by having each other's presence. Each of the 5 ghosts were filling in spots that she was missing in her own life and was going to make her better for it. It didn't relate to anything of gender. Even if the stereotype was there, it was all designed as elements to evolve in the story, and it wasn't going to stay the stereotype. It was going to kind of change the curve as it went. that's pretty much how at least I believe writing should go.
Yeah.
I think a lot of writing should focus on telling the story of a character, having other characters show up that become the stimulus and action that either evolve them as a person or push the plot forward in some regard. There shouldn't be exploitative characters. There shouldn't be situations where the reason why there's visual candy here is just for that purpose. There shouldn't be here, a point of just having a character who's, hey, watch my story because I put a lesbian in it. Mm-hmm. That should not be the reason you watch a movie. It shouldn't be a reason you read a book. Because representation, when there's no layers or meaning to it, means absolutely nothing.
Yep.
Exactly.
So, all right, something else. It's in this, because I looked up this post, because I knew there was other shit that I mentioned that I knew I was going to forget. And this is kind of a
big...
Did
I stall you long enough?
Oh, you did. It was amazing. Thank you for that. This is a big one, and it goes back to, the motivations for a character or how they're defined. And you want to avoid this. With female characters, you don't want to have them defined or motivated by rape or trauma tragedies.
That too.
They can happen, but
you can't use them as just shorthand.
Right. It's like, this person is so strong because they overcame this. It's like that, and it happens a lot where I notice some writers that are just like, all right, well, this person was raped. She overcame adversity and tragedy. And it's like, okay, but is there more to her than that? It's like where they're trying to take they're trying to do that flip thing where, oh, well, she was once powerless and now she's not. It's like...
Unless you're doing it like Kill Bill style.
Yeah, but most
where
of them don't.
Where it's in the hands of someone competent.
Yeah.
Mostly is why that works.
Most of them don't.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug when it comes to Quentin
Tarantino. Excuse me. Yeah, it's just, you want to avoid that.
It's kind of a bogus transitional point. It really doesn't. I mean, obviously, traumatic incidents like that do have repercussions in that regard, but that should never be in writing, there's supposed to be that spark of what makes the character transition.
Right.
That should never be the spark ever.
Right.
It doesn't work. It's never worked, and it's again very unrealistic. It's also
it
very, objectifies it.
Yeah, well, it's very it's not respecting the fact that how messed up that can make people. And usually the author wants the shorthand of going, well, I made a character that can accomplish that overcame this, without the dealing with the fact that this character is forever not ruined. Ruined is not the word I wanted. I'm sorry. Not at all. But this character's forever affected by, and it's changed them fundamentally. They can still exist day to day and live happy, normal lives, but ultimately they do view and interact with the world very differently in certain aspects because of what happened to them. And they want to use that shorthand and then immediately have them turn around and bang their protagonist character like they're not, nothing ever happened, and there's no,
oh my god,
or there's no hang up, or there's no repercussions for the fact that they had something very brutal and very invasive and personal that changed them fundamentally, and they're now putting themselves back together. There's just so many different things that invites into your story, and when you use it and don't respect the extreme weight of and significance of what's happened to that character, you have no right to be using that.
Well, and I can think of a good example of it. I don't know if any of you guys played the video game Heavy Rain.
I love that movie.
They're the female character in it. And this just goes for every David Cage game or every Quantic Dreams game, is that the female character was put into various forms of conflict through her story. There were 4 separate incidents where she was attempted to be raped.
Ugh.
They were in different levels. There was one where she got attacked by a guy with a buzzsaw and got drugged and roofied. There was one where she had to fight off this guy in a nightclub. There was one where she had a dream where she was fighting off a bunch of attackers in her home while she was in her underwear. And her main plot point in it, and it didn't develop her character at all, was to be a romantic subplot to the protagonist. So after all these things occurred, all these awful incidents where she barely survived these times, she attempts to try to kiss and get with Ethan. And then at the end of it, she plays no major plot point beyond that. That's her purpose, was to do that. They did the same thing with Ellen Page in Beyond Two Souls. Every single conflict that she ran into was some dude trying to sexually assault her, and her using her stand to aura them away.
Wait, is that a thing? Because I will play that game for stands.
This is though my issue with like Game of Thrones though. They pull this shit too.
They do.
And there are so many times where I still haven't finished the latest season. I know that the end of the season has Sansa completing that kind of arc, but like it took me the longest time to watch the episode that they wrote. They went out of the way to write an episode where she is raped, and I am still so uncomfortable and so disgusted by the fact that they did that. I didn't watch... Wait, no, I did. I did watch the scene. And it was just...
I know which one you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. That's the other thing, too, is that female character development defined through sexual violence is not... It's not that your characters can never encounter sexual violence, but when you throw it in there so callously and you're intentionally doing, and if you're not prepared to deal with the extreme outcome of what sexual violence can do to a person, you need to figure out something else. Figure out literally anything else, but just you have to tread cautiously. It is not appropriate considering the number of women who are sexually abused in real life and then get to sit and watch this being treated so flippantly. It's very... I am very uncomfortable with the fact that happens.
And I think we can also speak to... I think we're kind of all in the same picture, I think.
Yeah.
At least. I keep on saying that sexual assault occurring in things like that isn't always the problem. It's how it's utilized as a method of character transition or character evolution, or that's the point, is they're supposed to be in conflict in which that occurs. Rape is a horrible thing. If it occurs in a film or movie, it should be displayed as the horrible thing that it is. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be played off as a method.
You don't have to even show it, like...
Exactly.
Even just a cut, and implying it happened is immensely powerful enough, and that's where it's gratuitously shown. That's scary. That's scary to me.
There was an older film I saw that involved like Navy officers, but it was like made in the 1960s, and I don't remember the name of the movie, but it starred Kirk Douglas, and there is a scene where he's a guy that actually finds a girl and does that, and it doesn't show anything. It just shows him grab on her and start kissing her, and then it cuts away. And the entire movie, they play him up as the biggest bastard in the world, and she didn't get any better from it. Like it's shown as I know it sometimes feels cheap as this is how we show the horrible person, but it definitely. Yeah. What I'm saying, it wasn't turned into some sort of. It wasn't sexualized. It wasn't used as a saying, "Hey, this is made to make this character more presentable." Push them up in the attention of the filmmakers. It was shown as like, man, this guy's horrible. This guy needs to get fucking killed, which he does. I believe he does in the movie.
Right. I mean, they kind of do that. I just rewatched Watchmen a few weeks ago with my roommate, and that's the comedian does that too. Yeah. And it's very gratuitous, possibly, whether or not it's necessary. There's a lot.
I would say there's no such thing as necessary in that regard. Like they don't need it to really develop anything.
Exactly.
They don't even have to have it in the film.
Because I mean at that point in the film too, they had very clearly established this guy was already the scum of the earth. You don't really need to convince us more at that point.
Yeah. That is just a natural writing thing that always bothers me sometimes. This has nothing to do with writing women, but when people write villains, when they write them do evil things for the purpose of mwahaha, is so bothersome to me. Like, character, like, I know someday we'll actually talk about writing good villains, but I always get bothered when they have to do that as like, why did he do that? Because I'm evil. Like, that's the most ludicrous shit.
That should probably be our next topic. Like, podcast.
I love villains, so I don't mind.
Villain discussions are good.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, we could probably discuss, kind of briefly specify what we were talking about before between writing a good female character and a bad female character. My perspective, at least on that, and obviously I would like to hear all your perspectives on it, is a good one shouldn't have a basis on whether they're a female or not. It's a good character that's written to the story that adds to it. Mm-hmm. A bad one is one that's utilized for purposes of my three major film faux pas when it comes to females is romantic subplot, sexualization, and motherly figure. Those are the three. Like, if that's all they do, or any combination of those, they're not characters. They're not. They're simply there to be in the background and add that particular element to a story, and it doesn't mean anything. So I think a bad female character is one that's exploited, that doesn't add anything to the plot, whether it's sexual, whether it's trying to show characters that are empowered, any of those kind of things. If you took the character out of the story and it would make no difference, the character shouldn't be in there.
I agree with that largely, and I'm even okay with the roles themselves, again, so long as they're not used as a shorthand that says, hey, I don't want to bother writing or fleshing out this character, because you already know what they're like and what they're going to do, so why would I bother writing a character when I can just say, here's the stereotype, you can put two and two together, let's move on and not think about it.
Right.
That's my thing. Is I'm not so much an issue with stereotypes as just that mentality.
The stereotype needs to have meaning, though.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
There needs to be something behind it. A character can be obviously nurturing or sexualized or things like that, as long as if that's the character who they are, that's great. Mm-hmm. But if it has literally no meaning, and my big part is if you end up removing that character, would it make a difference in whatever you're reading or the film you're watching or anything like that?
I think you still can, because they usually are still very flimsy. You know, they're legs to stand on. They're flimsy and made of cardboard, but they're legs to stand on. So for me, it's more of a, okay, can they be, if you had someone in that position, what would, for me, the biggest thing is, like, as an actor, a lot of times when I've had to play those characters, I have nothing to work with. So the way I try to think about it is there something that, if someone was playing this character, for example, is there anything for them to grasp on that makes this a unique character where they could just say, I'm going to come in here and not be on autopilot when I do this role?
Right.
Because I'm on autopilot sometimes, and I really wish I wasn't. Like, no, legit, like, not, and it's not intentionally. It's usually more of just I literally have nothing to work with. And a lot of times, therefore, like, some of the point-and-click games I've done where I sometimes don't even have character art. And it's literally just, this voice type is evil. Yeah. And that's all you have to work from, other than maybe a few clues you can pick out of the dialogue. And so that's literally, that's an extreme example. So, just, unfortunately, some of them I can still be like, okay, I could at least pull in my experience from here, but, you kind of want to keep that in mind.
And their motivation base would somewhat have to make sense. Mm-hmm. Like, they're having a character who, as it mentioned, if it's just kind of those background, he is evil, or she is sexy, and there's really no guidelines of why.
Because reasons, Travis, reasons.
Because we got to get those views, damn it. it throws back to a bygone era where it was.
It's good for the business. It's good for the business.
Good for the business, but it also did no benefits to the people that were portrayed in those roles.
Travis, you could say it's best for business.
I certainly could. Wrestling used to fall under that really hard and is still trying to fix itself. I'm not going to get into that, but yeah, it's really I get bothered from kind of the bygone era of not really putting in characters of meaning into their role, and I can't care for a character. I can't sympathize with a character if really their only portrayal is to go, hey, that's eye candy, or hey, that character is supposed to be the bitch, quote unquote, things like that. Like, if it doesn't have any meaning, then I just close the book and put it back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are, like, don't worry, you can have, we should probably wrap it up, because I think we've covered, like, everything, so to condense it, like, you can have those really shallow characters, but they should not be part of your main or supporting cast.
Yeah.
They can exist because they exist in real life. They're based on something, but that they should not be part of the characters that are supposed to drive your story.
Yeah, if you have
or if the purpose of the... Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, if you have the chance to develop them and you don't take that chance, that's more when it's like, ew.
Right.
Well, if the purpose of what you're trying to say is, as I mentioned, like an action movie where they're trying to play up the fact that the characters are stereotypes for the sake of tongue-in-cheek humor, or, you know, it's supposed to be some kind of big film action thing, it hurts me a lot. It offends me a lot less than ones where you're legitimately trying to make a good story that's deep interwoven with everything, and then you just have this character that means nothing.
Yes.
Well, it's just all I'm saying. You can have them as long as they're not part of the characters they're supposed to drive. If they're like a background character that doesn't really mean anything, that someone's like, oh, you come across as one person, and they act like that. It's like, all right, whatever, moving on. Like, it's fine, but they should not be part of your main grouping of characters that are driving the story.
Right.
You know, you don't have to not have them, or you can have them then, and then, like, maybe they see him later and he's not like that. That person's not like that anymore, or maybe
intention is the point.
Right. So,
like, how you intend to use them, and are you aware of the fact you're using a stereotype? If you are you thinking about how that affects your narrative? Those kind of things. Right.
So, to wrap up on writing women, it's not that hard, guys. Don't over.
If you could write a guy character, you could write a girl character. It's pretty much the same thing.
Nah.
What a concept. You know?
Yes and no, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm being general.
Well, yeah. It shouldn't freak you out like, oh my gosh, I can't write female characters because I'm a dude. No, you can write them. Just
right. It's just be respectful.
Advice, and if you have a hard time writing girl characters, ask for perspective. Right. Watch people. Think of any women that are been involved with your life, and think about how they interact with you and other people. And
have actual
do some study.
Female friends, especially if they are writers, read over your stuff and legitimately point out, say, hey, I am specifically worried about this happening. Do you see instances of this, and how would you recommend I change it? Not just like, can you look at my stuff and tell me if it's good? And, if they're just like, yeah, it's fine. That's it. It may be fine for one thing, but, specifically say, hey, I'm looking to see if I'm doing this. Can you tell me yes or no?
Yeah, and that makes sense. So.
Also, just a general rule about life, don't be an asshole.
Yeah, always keep that in mind. You can go far with not being an asshole.
When you're starting to write female characters, the first thing you should try to think about is, am I an asshole? If the answer is yes, put your pen down.
Like, another thing, just like one final thing. If you wouldn't write a male character a certain way because it creeps you out or it just feels awkward, don't write your female character that way.
Amen.
Just that's a hint.
That's a really good thing. Would it be weird if I spent 2 paragraphs describing the way the lines of this shirt clung to his abs and his butt and other part, just
Yeah, it's
again those lusciously cultivated testicles.
Yeah.
To bring them full
I'm
circle.
getting bothered by you keep on describing them as luscious. Like
sorry,
it's some kind of chocolatier ad.
Would
No,
you prefer
dude,
buxom? I don't know.
No.
Buxom testicles.
No, dude. You're guys, you're
Drenched in morning
no.
dew.
Guys, you're both wrong. They're delectable.
Don't you mean delectable?
Oh my god.
And that's how you bring it back, master style, going back 6 years. Suck
To when
it.
Adam wrote a script, very, very, very hungry.
And it was your character that said it, and it was all of 3 of us in the Skype call, and we did the table read for it. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
how you bring it back. Brought it back. And on that note,
Speaking of luscious testicles, thank you guys for listening to our podcast today.
We do appreciate it. I hope we didn't weird you out. But if you made it this far, I'm assuming you're... Thanks. Thanks.
so thanks, Natalie, for coming and being our quota.
Yeah.
So we're not.
Anytime.
If you're looking to get art of luscious testicles, look to Adam's Patreon. He's doing not safe for work art. I'm the best advertisement you'll ever pay for, Adam.
I shouldn't be laughing. I'm sorry. Travis, you're horrible. Damn it, Travis.
You okay, Adam?
No.
Of course not.
No. No.
Damn it, Travis.
I had a comment, but I'm not going to say it. Not gonna say it. Not gonna say it.
Not gonna say it.
Not gonna say it. So
Not
anyway,
gonna say it.
thank you guys for listening to this podcast. I'm aiming to make this a weekly thing where every week we'll have a discussion. Like next week, I think we are going to talk about villains and writing them and how much fun they can be and all that stuff. That's actually a really good topic to discuss.
About how delectable they are.
How to be
Yes.
villains.
Yeah, so I think we'll do that. So that'll work out really well.
Cool.
So again, thank you for listening. And yes, I have a Patreon where there will be a link in the description and probably an annotation because I'm going to start doing that now because I need money. Please give me money. I'll do things.
He'll draw anything.
I will draw anything. I've gotten to that point in my life.
No matter how luscious or delectable they might be, he will draw them.
I'm doing it now. I waste no time getting a jump start on it. So yeah, thanks for listening. Hopefully you learned something new about writing female characters, and hopefully this was helpful in some form or another. You never know. If you stuck around, awesome. Good on you. You're good people. So that's all I got. And we'll see you next time then. Maybe.
Adios.
Unless we're
Anya Haters.
unless we're Futurama and get canceled.